We're kicking off a new series on standalone applications, and this is the first in the series. So here we go. Let's just get right into it. We're going to basically just modify a patch and then turn that into an app for our computer. We're going to start on the Mac, and then we're going to move over and look at it on Windows. So to start with, I'm going to modify a patcher that I know is part of one of our packages. So here the package manager is loading up. It'll take it just a second. And when it does, then we will jump down. And I know that we're going to try and find a patch that's in the Gitmo package that I want to use. Okay, so here it is. I already have this package installed, so I can click Launch to get the launch patcher. And I know that the patcher I'm looking for right here is this Audiovisuals Patcher. So let's take a quick look at this. What this is doing is it's taking the sound of my voice and it's making these kind of crazy, like, party effects for visuals that we might want to project or something. So with this as the patch that we're going to use, I'll go ahead. We'll just copy all of the contents out of here and close all of these. Make our new patcher. Actually, we could go one of two routes. If we're going to make a standalone application, we can make a new patcher, and then we can create an application from it. Or if we know in advance, as we do this time, that we are ultimately going to want to make a standalone, sometimes it's easier to start with a project. So let's go ahead and start with a project. We make a new project. Max will want to put all of the new projects in the Max 7 projects folder. So I can go ahead here and call this Party Patcher. There we go. I'll click Save and it'll create my project for me. This is an empty project window. I'll go ahead and say we're going to add a new file to the project, and it's going to be a new patcher. You can see it's already put us in the Party Patcher project folder, and we can just name this patcher anything we want to. So I'll just call it main, because this is the main Max patcher in this project. Say save, and then we can see over here that indeed we have our patcher. We can close that window, we can get it back from our patcher. I'm going to go ahead and now paste the contents of this patcher in here. Okay, it's not responding to my voice now. That's because the audio is not turned on. If we come and look in this patch, what we'll see is that inside of this wave subpatcher, there is an ADC object, and a load bang needs to trigger that to turn on, but load bangs don't fire when you paste. So I don't really want to use an ADC anyway. I'd like to hook up a sound file to play back to it. So I'm going to make an inlet to hook up to the PCamp object. And then out here I have my inlet, and I can drag in the sound file that I want to play through there. So we'll come over to the list of sound files, and why not? The drum loop is real obvious if we want to hear what's going on or see what's going on. So we can take the drum loop. We can take the combination of the two channels. So if we add two channels and then divide by 2, need to do this at audio rate, then that will give us the average of those two channels. And then we probably want to hear it, so go ahead and throw in a live gain object. Live gain object. And then hook that up, and we'll hook it up to an easy DAC. That'll get us started, remembering that we do, in fact, want to start the audio when our app starts, so the user doesn't have to do anything. Okay, so we start that up. Now when I hit play here, go ahead and turn the volume down. And we'll go ahead and loop it as well. And we can see that the visuals are nice and responsive. Let's make 2 more quick changes to the thing that we're going to turn into an app. One of those changes that I would like to make is that I would like to also make the visuals go full screen. So we can do that. Here's the JIT world object. We can do that by setting an attribute to make it full screen. So we can say full screen $1. And when we make it full screen, we'd also like that window to be the frontmost window and not have this patcher in front of it. So I'm also going to send it a front message. And then we can hook up a toggle to it. And we'll hook up a load mess here as well. Okay. Let's just test our patcher real quick. We'll close the patch, and then we'll come over here and we'll click on the main. We notice a whole bunch of other stuff has been added to this project that we didn't add. So we'll come back and look at that in a sec. Right now, let's open our main patcher. And sure enough, it opens up. It's not playing our sound file, however. So we need to come over to the playlist, and we'll need to trigger it to play the sound file. So we'll make another load mess to play our sound file. That should do the trick. Let's have it default to a lower gain level as well. Okay, so that's one of the changes we wanted to make. The other change I wanted to make is instead of having this always look the same, I want to make the way that these graphics respond to the audio, I want to have some like additional control over it so that it's not just always moving in this linear type mapping. So to do that, there's a package that I have installed already called ease. And one of the objects from that is the jit.ease object. If I pull open the help patcher here, it has a nice little widget that I can use, which is a B patcher. And I can copy that widget and hook it up to the jit.ease object. And we'll do that over here. My patch is messy, but we can come back and clean that up later. Jit.ease, I'm going to stick that here in between jitmo join and jitgl multiple. By default, it's already a linear function, so it's going to behave exactly the way that it was behaving before. I'll go ahead and turn it on, and we can see what that looks like. But we can see that it'll look dramatically different if I do something like change to this mapping. Okay, so that should give us enough to play with here at the moment. We have a audio file that's playing back, so that means we have a dependency on this audio file. We're using a B patcher, which means we have a dependency on a B patcher. We have objects from the jitmo package, objects from the jit.ease package. Then we have some standard objects in Mac. So there's actually quite a bit of complexity here that will need to be handled when we want to build our app. Happily, however, projects are going to take care of a lot of that work for us. So let's get back over. I'll use, on the Mac, it's Command and the back tick to get over to our project window. So the project window knows we have our main max patch, and it's also figured out what all those dependencies are. So it knows that we have jitmo grid, which is a patcher, And it also knows that we have this ease chooser patcher. This is the B patcher that I was just looking at. It knows we're using the drum loop sound file. There's a JavaScript in there. Because we copied and pasted stuff from other places, we must have ended up somehow with this JavaScript in there, in the JS UI, and etc. So this is great. It knows everything that it needs, and we should be able just to move along. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead now and click this button down here. This is the third button over from the left, and it gives us some different options. And one of those is we can make a Max for Live device, and one of those is we could build an application. So I'm going to say build the application. I'm going to build it onto my desktop. We could actually build two things. We could build a thing called a collective, which is one way of distributing work to other people if they already have Macs and you don't want them to modify your collected work. Or we can do an application, which in my experience is generally a little bit more useful. You get the version of Macs, you get everything you need, you can just click a button and run it. So we'll say save, and it will go about collecting everything that's needed to build the standalone app, and it'll build the app for us and put it on our desktop. This will take it a minute, and we'll see a spinning, there it is, the spinning color wheel. So this will come up, and depending on how big your standalone is, this could be a minute or two. So don't be alarmed or think that Max is frozen up on you. It's just good cooking takes time. So we'll wait for that to complete, and then we'll test out our app. I'll go ahead and edit this to make it a little bit shorter for the purposes of the video, but be aware that it's going to take probably longer than the amount of time that it's taking in the video for your own app. Okay, it finished, so the window went away. I'm going to go ahead and just quit Max altogether so that we aren't running Max at all anymore. And here we see on the desktop, we see Party Patcher, and this is an app. If I do get info on it, on the Mac, that's going to be a Command I. You can see the kind is it's an application. We can see that it's really big, 370 megabytes, because it has all of Mac's combined in it, not just our patcher. So if I launch it, let's see what happens. There it is. So we can go ahead and quit Party Patcher. That is ready for the world in some form. There are a lot of details we still will want to address in it, especially if we add some features. We'll want to change the icon. In this series, we'll have an entire video just on icons and how to deal with icons. So before we go any further, we're going to celebrate our success here on the Mac by seeing if we can find similar success on Windows. So I am running Windows 8 in parallels here, so I can pull up Windows 8. I'll go ahead and launch Max. Okay, Max is up and available. I'm going to make a new patcher. And this time, instead of using a project, this time I'll just do it from a patcher so you can see the other way of making standalones. So anyway, I have my patcher now, and I will want to paste that content. So let's jump back over to the Mac. And it'll be a little confusing, but we'll launch Mac 7 on the Mac. Okay, so here's our patcher on the Mac. We'll copy the whole thing. We'll quit the Macs that's running on the Mac, go over to Windows, and now we should be able to paste everything here in Windows. So this is good. Make our window a little bigger. Because we pasted, it did not fire load bangs. We are familiar with that. And we'll go ahead and save our patcher. We'll just save it in Documents. We'll call it Windows Party Patcher. Okay. So if we want to make a standalone application out of this, what do? Well, we could make a project and add this patcher to it, as we just did on the Mac, or we can go to the File menu and say Build Collective or Application. When we do that, we'll get this little window. This window will let us, if we wanted to, add dependencies to this script. We don't have to do that. Everything's automatically found. We know that it's automatically found because we saw that in the project example, but if you use this workflow, you won't be able to see that. So that's one of the benefits to using a project. If we hit Build, it will provide us with the same dialog that we would get if we were using a project, and we can say Application instead of Collective. And we'll say Save. I'm going to put this on the desktop again and say Save. Okay, remarkably quicker than it was on the Mac, however. Okay, we'll go ahead and exit Windows. And on our desktop, we don't see the exe file for our app. What's going on? It's in a folder. So when we build on Windows, instead of just getting everything bundled into one monolithic looking item, we get a folder. And inside the folder, we have an exe, which is the thing we'll double click. We have an MXF. The MXF is a collective, which we just talked about. It's everything about your patcher and its dependencies, but it's not Macs or the stuff built into Macs. And then we have a resources folder. If you looked in here, you're going to see there's extensions and externals and everything else that Macs needs to run. So, Windows Party Patcher.exe. Let's try it out. There we go. It's working on Windows too. That's a great start. So we have a number of different tasks that we'll want to do as we progress through this series. What happens when Macs doesn't find your dependencies automatically and you need to add them? What happens when you want to customize your app in some other way? How do we go about getting your app into the Mac App Store and meeting those requirements? Those are all questions that we'll address. Until then, happy patching.